Hi friends and family. We are on to day 2 of making sourdough. So we had our leaven that we created yesterday and it sat overnight on our counter. And so now it looks like this. You can see that it's stable, right? It's not all that goopy. Before it was like really sticky on our hands and now it's got a little bit of a bounce back to it. So we're gonna scrape all of this into our new container. And slowly over the next couple of hours, we're going to create what will be our bread dough. So all of that good stuff goes into the bowl, and to that bowl we're going to add warm milk, warm water, and 900 grams of flour. So first of all, I'm going to take this and I'm going to tear it out on our food scale so that it gets to 0. There we go. And then I'm going to add 475 grams of warm water. So I just run the warm tap. I'm going to add 474 grams, so 475. Getting close. There we go. It's a little bit more. We'll take a little bit out. There we go, close enough. And then again, just like we did with the creating the leaven, I'm gonna mix with my hands all of that good leaven into the water to just break it up and to make it one liquid element as opposed to like different textures that the flour is gonna have to mix with. So I'm just mushing that up, and actually you could add the milk in and do that at this point too. It doesn't really matter. All you're trying to do is get the solids mixed in with the liquids really well. Okay, it's looking good. And it's just super liquidy at this point. And then I'm going to tear out the scale again. And for the milk, what I do is I just pour 90 grams of milk into a container and put it in the microwave, or in this case I poured more than that into a container and put it in the microwave for like 30 seconds. Okay, we're all teared out there, and I'm going to put in 90 grams of warm milk. There we go. Okay, make sure that that's mixed in really well. And then the next part gets serious. The next part is adding 900 grams of flour to the mixture. And this is the point where if you wanted to kind of get crazy and mix it up with different types of flour, this is where we did once half and half rye flour with bread flour. We've got some wheat flour that I might try. But for today, we're just gonna go straight across bread flour, not to complicate things. And that's all mixed in, looking good. And when I do the flour, I like to do it in small amounts. I like to do it in little batches. So the number we're trying to hit is 900 grams. So I do 300 grams at a time. And you'll notice that this whole time I've been using my hands to mix. So if you have a stand mixer that has a dough hook, you can use that for this if you'd like to. Again, I really enjoy, using my hands and being able to feel what the bread dough is feeling like. So I'm going to take just a little nothing bowl. Sorry, bowl. You're not nothing. You're important. I'm going to tear that out. There we go. And I'm going to add 300 grams of flour. Getting close. There we are. Okay, and I'm going to pour this in to our mixing bowl, and I'm going to use my hand to mix it in. And it'll sit on the top. The first part of incorporating is pretty easy. I do some pinching to really get into that middle space where those kind of clouds of dry flour can be. When it starts to get after we do this next one, it's going to get super sticky. At which point our tactily defensive friends and family members are going to wish that they had a stand mixer with a dough hook. But I promise it comes together over time. So the key to this, you know, everybody makes sourdough differently. I read an article this morning that a guy like just plops some sourdough starter into a regular bread recipe and calls it sourdough, and that's enough for him. But you know, I found in this most recent recipe that I've used, this gets the best. It's called breadcrumb, so it's called the crumb of the bread. So the little pockets of air and like the texture and the sponginess of the inside of the piece of bread that you're eating, that's what I like the most about homemade sourdough bread. And the way that I'm going to show you how to do this is what I found to work the best. So that was our first 300 grams of flour. I've tared this out and I'm going to go for another 300. Here, I'll show you. It's starting to form like more of a thick mixture as opposed to that really watery mixture that we started out with. It's looking really good, and we'll do another 300. Okay, so our dough has been mixed. I'll show you the texture of it. This is what it's looking like right now. A little choppy, a little pilly. We're gonna leave this for 30 minutes because the flour cells themselves have to have time to soak up all of that good moisture that we just gave them. And then after 30 minutes, we're gonna add 20 grams of warm water and 20 grams of salt to the mix. I usually add 40 grams of salt. I am straying from the recipe here, but I like a nice flavorful bread, and I found that it doesn't hurt the chemistry of the bread to add a little bit more salt. So I double the salt and add in that 20 grams of water, and then there's going to be a whole process of flipping and pushing that comes after that. So 30 minutes, I'll be right back. Hello, welcome back. It's been 30 minutes. Our dough has had time to soak up all of that good moisture, and we're gonna add the salt and the water to the mixture now. So what you might find is that this big boy is too heavy for your food scale. So instead of putting this whole thing on there, tearing it out and adding the salt and water, I'm gonna go ahead and use a smaller bowl, and I'm gonna add 40 grams of salt to this, and then I'll add that to the dough, and then I'll add 20 grams of water and add that to the dough. I need a little more salt. I like to use Morton's kosher salt. Any kosher salt will do. In fact, any salt that's not iodized will do. And like I said, I like to go a little heavy on the salt in my recipe. Not that heavy. There we go, 40 grams. And I will just sprinkle that on top here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and tear this back out, adding 20 grams of water, which it doesn't take long to get to, that's a quick one. Pour this on top, and then we knead. This is gonna take a second. Okay, so I've incorporated all of the salt and the water back into the mixture, and you can tell by, this is one of those important reasons to use your hand, the salt crystals you can feel in the dough, and you can tell that it's done when those salt crystals you don't feel anymore. You'll feel that like there's a pocket of them, and you gotta mix that back in and keep mixing it in. But now that the salt and the water are all incorporated, we are going to let this bad boy sit for anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes, and then we're gonna start into the process of folding. So some recipes tell you to flip, some recipes tell you to flip and fold. I found a video that I really liked that I'll be showing you how to do, and it's basically just every 30 to 45 minutes for 3 to 5 hours. Ooh, Joe Tyson song. Every 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and 3 to 4 hours, you're gonna work on folding and flipping this over. Hi, Joe Tyson. Hello, and we're back. And now I have a guest star with me, Joe Tyson. You might know him. He is going to help me because the next step is the flip and push. And so he's going to take the camera and show you what I'm doing here inside the bowl. So the first thing that I'm going to do is get my hand a little bit wet, not a lot wet. Notice that I'm shaking it off. And then you're going to run your hand along the inside of the bowl, between the bowl and the dough, a quarter turn, and flip and push that dough down in the middle. So you're going to turn and push, turn and push 4 times until the whole thing has kind of had its shot to get up and over. And we're going to do that every 35 to 45 minutes for the next 4 hours. That helps to aerate the dough really well, so it gets all those nice bubbles in it. It helps the fermentation process. So once that is done, after 4 hours, come back to this video and we will teach you the rest. Hello, friends and family. It has been around 4 hours of us turning and flipping the dough. So it's time, and it's got like a good spongy bounce back. So it's time to do the first shape of our loaf. That's gonna happen twice. So I'm gonna throw some flour down on your board or your countertop. And I'm gonna gently, gently, gently release the dough from the bowl onto the flour, and I'm gonna cut that in half. This is the board scraper that we use. I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that in half, and I can even see on the surface of the dough even now that it's got like some nice bubbles in it. So I'm gonna push one of those halves to the side, evenly distribute that flour again. And the idea here is to avoid losing any of the bubbles that are in your dough. So like pushing on it or squeezing on it is a bad idea. I like to just kind of like grab onto it a little bit and let it hang to change the shape of it. But ultimately all you're trying to do here is suggest the shape that you want it to be in. You can see a cat in the background. So what I do is I take the board scraper and I go under one side, and I use my finger, you can see my fingers right here. I use that as the pivot point to fold the dough up and over. I turn it and I do that again, fold it up and over, and then I'll go the opposite sides, right? So I'll do it 4 times, basically a little envelope, folding it up and over, flipping it around, folding it up and over, and then I just turn that on its head. I turn it upside down so that the seam is on the bottom, and that one is done. So again, just to get it to be a little bit more square shaped, I hold it and I just kind of let it reshape, and then toss it down, scrape this up and over, flip it, scrape this up and over and flip it, this side up and over, and this side up and over. And I'll put the seam side down on the palette, and you're just trying to suggest the shape. Just try to get it into like an oval or a circle. It doesn't actually really matter at this point. From this step, you're going to cover it with a tea towel or a cloth or something like that and let it sit another half hour to hour. Hello! So here we are at the last step of day 2 in the sourdough making process. You can see that our shaped loaves that went through the first shaping are here. They've risen a bit. It was about 45 minutes to an hour between the last time that you saw these and now. We're gonna put a little bit more flour down on the board over here, and we're gonna move one of these loaves out of the way and do the second shaping. And then after the second shaping, these are gonna go into the refrigerator overnight. There's a health benefit to letting them sit in the fridge overnight, but more importantly to me is that they taste a lot better. That's our cat. So you're gonna take one of these loaves, you're gonna turn it upside down, and you're gonna pull from the top, just like you can see, like 4 fingers worth, and you're gonna tuck that down, just like we did before. That was like a full tuck over, but this time you're just gonna do a little bit up at the top, and it's gonna end up being a bit of a braid. So you're gonna pull from the left side and put that right where your fingers are, your right hand fingers are, and then you're gonna take from the left side at the top and replace your fingers, and continue doing that where the dough looks like it kind of bulges out. You're just making a simple braid here. And then at the end, you're gonna start rolling it up from the bottom. So I did tuck the top, do a left over, right over, left over, right over, left over, right over, and then I'm tucking that bottom piece up and rolling the whole thing like a jelly roll. And from there, I'm gonna set this down with the seam on the bottom. Just kind of suggest to it to stay together, almost like a little, like you would with a pie crust. You just kind of push the dough together at the bottom. But again, be careful not to push too much on the dough because you don't want the air bubbles to come out. I'll put a little bit more flour down and do the other loaf. Sometimes when you've done this, there's going to be like a lot of flour on the bottom here. I brush that off so that you don't end up with like a huge amount of raw flour in your dough. And then I tuck the top, left, right, left, right, left, right, and at the bottom, I roll it up like a jelly roll. Suggest the top and the bottom. And then the next step is to put them into your proofing baskets. You guys that are watching this video because you got it as a gift for Christmas have been provided with 2 proofing baskets. We don't have those. So we'll get them for ourselves at some point. So I just use these 2 bowls, and I take a tea cloth and I put one side of it down in the bowl and add a tiny little bit of flour, just enough to make sure that it doesn't stick. And I throw one of my loaves in there with the seam side down, cover that baby up, and pop it in the fridge. I'm going to do that to the other loaf as well, and then in the next video we'll teach you how to get it from the refrigerator into your oven, into your mouth.